Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Equus Christie, and today I want to talk a little bit about chivalry. What is chivalry? Um, you know, much of what we think we know about knights and chivalry is only half right, and we have TV shows blamed for that. Uh, so what does this word mean? Let's look at and delve into what actually the word means. Knighthood, chivalry, all this. So the word in and of itself came from action of service. They served a feudal lord, and later on, they went on to also serve the church. The concept was before all of this secularized, and it wasn't until the church steps in and begins to instill the Christian ideals of knighthood that we're all familiar with and we think of. The idea of upholding right and justice and protection of the weak, that came about by later, much later. Uh, Before that, uh, you had a lot of warriors who would go and rape, pillage, and use their force for selfish reasons. Jeffrey Charney explains in his works that a knight is as the most worthy and the most adept warrior, and that a knight noble in intentions and deeds, unwavering, virtuous, loyal, and chivalrous. They're one who fears and loves God, ceaselessly wages a twofold war both against the flesh and blood and against a spiritual army of evil in the heavens. That all came from Christian influence, the epitome of which was exemplified in the orders that participated in the Crusades, at least from a theological and philosophical standpoint. Uh, so we can take examples of literature written during the times uh, of the height of chivalry by knights themselves, and they talk about the order of chivalry itself from a warrior perspective. You see, historically, knights, they were the defenders. The word knight is derived from the Old English language knicht, uh, meaning a servant, or a servant of the Lord, or the feudal lord. So the concept of service was not only essential, but it was the primary element in knighthood. We can also see in a parallel development the word samurai in Japanese language also comes from the verb to serve. So knighthood, as the Old English knichtad, had the meaning of adolescence. Uh, Beginning as warriors, some defended the populace and others pillaged, like I said. the concept of knighthood that we know today was the product of the repurposing over time, while their roots remain the same. So their virtues were warrior ones, and they were revered by warrior cultures the world over. They exemplified prowess, strength, courage, and loyalty. And these are the virtues of the pure soldier, the killing machine, who, when he uses his considerable strength for good, he contributes greatly to society, even as he is estranged from it. Your warriors are always in society, but they are apart. That means, like, out of and separated from society, because it is a calling. To be a warrior is a calling, uh, and that's why you have the orders of chivalry, like you would have the orders of priesthoods. Um, and so society, they quickly settled from the warfare of the Dark Ages that spawned this free roaming warrior. As the church grew in power and influence alongside the growth of ease at court, developments were made possible which owed to the leisure accorded a more stable Europe, which gave voice to others concerned with what the knights were and what they should become. The cleric and the lady, chiefly, were the two main influences upon the course of knighthood, next to the influences of the warriors themselves. The church believed that the knights should become knights of Christ, Miles Christi, using their considerable strength to defend the faith and to become the physical defenders of the church and her ideals. And the church contributed to powerful virtues of faith, temperance, and humility. These are three cornerstone virtues of what has come to be knighthood. Raymond de Lowell wrote in his work on knights and chivalry, a knight should first defend his faith and protect the Holy Church. Second, defend his Lord and protect the weak, including women, widows, and orphans, keeping himself ready for action by continuous exercise, attending jousts and tournaments, accepting offices in secular government if the king chooses him, and he should act as judge or magistrate in local justice courts, and it is his duty to pursue criminals and bring them to justice. So we could see the wide uh, breadth of which knights were to take part in society to help establish order, justice, uh, as well as being physically involved in the jousting and the tournaments during that time to prove your prowess and to um, go about perfecting your craft in warfare. Thanks to romance literature of the time, we have gained this picture of what we nowadays think a knight was at the time. And so the idea of the lady, the noble lady or noble woman, uh, which would demand certain things from the knight in this literature, uh, is highly influential, uh, and that the knight would act with strength on one hand and courtesy and respect on the other. That is something a knight should respect women. He should defend them in their hour of need, and not interact with them out of mere lust. That was, shunned. Um, but rather so love, uh, not in the sense of love like between husband and wife kind of love, but a platonic kind of love, uh, was thought to be a powerful influence over the knight, and it would strengthen him in the heat of battle and would propel the knight to greatness. Um, the church kind of agreed with this, but only argued that the spiritual love of Christ was superior to the love of a woman. And but the most important detail was that love, as an ennobling motivator, was added as a chivalric element, which uh, was to stay. As a nobleman and dispenser of justice, the knight was required to seek justice, to defend the right, and to dispense of his wealth with largesse, showing the generosity that thwarted greed and thus helped the knight to ennoble himself in deed as well as blood. Again, uh, Raymond de Lowell is a magnificent uh, work of literature that I suggest you read. Um, it was written about 1270 ish, somewhere around in there. But he goes into great detail on the misconception of the order of chivalry, and he wanted to kind of have a codice of these unspoken rules, um, the unilateral order of chivalry, and it gives us a lot of insight in history. So Raymond talks, or he actually says that there's never been a perfect knight, and he says, by definition, knighthood is an office that strives for a distant ideal, a changing ideal, but one that seeks to emulate the ancient virtues associated with a chivalric office. So this shows that knights had a certain mindset, a set of standard or philosophical practices that were ideal based on service. And so the concepts of chivalry had to be addressed from time to time, obviously, and adjusted as situations arose. But knights looked forward in their path. They also looked back to ancient virtues, as they were called. So, what could we say those principles were? Chiefly, it was service to their liege lord, their feudal lord, to the defenseless. Um, that lay at the very foreground. As Americans, we have no liege lord. The government is of the people, for the people, by the people. So we have the Constitution, on which our republic was formed, and such as we take oaths to defend it, and the rights which it secures, as well as our key mission, which is defense of our country. Um, we also have to look at defense of life, the enforcement and of just laws, the peace of the nation, and the preservation of truth and justice. We can see that Lowell goes even further and analyzes that knights will, by definition, fail because they're human, but they obtain their grace in striving for virtue, for the perseverance of seeking to overcome the vanities of the body and soul, to do what's right. It's a striving for excellence, even as we know that perfection is beyond our grasp. But that fact alone doesn't allow us just to stop and give up. So this example leads to the human side of the ethos of a warrior. I mean, we're always struggling on the path to do what's right. We may fail. We probably are going to fail. But, that's just because we're only humans. But it's our good faith attempt to discharge our duties uh, of office or of just being a warrior, a servant warrior in society, which is that relentless pursuit of justice and peace. So during the time of the Crusades, it's very controversial nowadays, I guess. The church began to push knighthood into this new bounds. Before that time, knights were known as these brute, boisterous, and many often used their might, like I said, to rob and steal from the poor and the defenseless. We nowadays can't seem to fit that particular image in our heads thanks to this romantic literature. Um, but uh, Geoffrey de Charnay, in his book of Chivalry, tells us that of most importance, uh, it is a necessity to be a good Christian and imperative for the knight because he lives in constant peril and he's got to be ready to die at a moment's notice. And he explains that knights felt the need to fit their violent vocation into the framework of a Christian teaching. Many, if not all of them, wanted to understand as well as buttress their place of dominance with the increasingly ordered Christian society. Another good book is The Knight in Chivalry by Richard Barber, and he presents an extensive history on the matter, and it's very, very, very informative. I suggest you read it. Um, but in this book, Barber discusses the concept of service to the knight, and he outright states that it's nonetheless central to the very office of knighthood. There's an unremarkable truth to this statement because, as all of us who are knights now in modern times, we must indeed be in service to others. So, to take a piece of what Barber said here, as the hauberk safeguards the body, so the knight safeguards the church. As the helm defends the head, so the knight defends the church. As the fear of the lance drives back the unarmed, so the knight drives back the church's enemies. The two edges of the sword show that the knights serve both God and people, and its point shows that all people must obey him. The horse that carries him represents the people, whom the knight must lead, but who support him and give him the wherewithal for an honorable life. Wow, that is deep. So, knighthood, as a thanks to Christianity, begins to take shape, and the watchword of service is being laid in the DNA of chivalry. Charney states that it would be wise always for the knight, he insists, to think less about the pleasure of his body and more about his soul and honor, and that a good knight must wear his armor as purely and devoutly as any priest wears his vestments. So a knight has to keep his conduct thoroughly honest. He can't have any contradictions between a worthy knightly vocation and true religion. So piety or piety and chivalry don't occupy separate spaces in his consciousness. They're inseparable, almost interchangeable qualities of men in war. Not to mention that knights have to keep in that state of grace for, they never know when they're gonna have to meet their maker and stand before him and answer for everything they've done. Um, so it behooves a knight and a warrior to seek humble devotion for the help of our Lord in such a perilous occupation that's required. So the position and way of life of these men at arms should be very, very devoted to eking out a not just a physical prowess, but also a spiritual prowess. And so yeah, wow, that was that really looks into not just the character of a knight, the knighthood itself, but this idea of developing one's not just spirituality, but developing one's soul. And as a Christian, we oftentimes think of being a warrior and being a Christian are at odds with one another, but it's actually not. To be a good warrior, you have to be a good Christian, and when you can put those two things together, wow, what a powerful thing, Okay, well, I think I'm going to end it right here for tonight. Next time we'll go into a little bit more deeper discussion, but I like to keep these things as short as possible. So with that, I'll see you in the next one. Stay tuned.